Okay, so this is about Blackrock's biggest blunder within the Bitcoin space. I'm telling you that in the year 2032, there will be a headline that says how BlackRock lost their Bitcoin cash cow. And it comes down to this. In about, when was it? In December of 2023, it was stated that BlackRock would be launching their ETF in about January. You know, that was the final deadline. And there was a YouTuber, well known, who goes by the name of British Hodl, who was saying that, look, he was saying that now that we've got a real ETF, MicroStrategy is useless in a way. It's going to lose that premium because it was a de facto ETF, as he said. Yeah, he said it was a de facto ETF, whatever that means. And now there's an official one. People couldn't buy an ETF before, so they had to use MicroStrategy. So now they're going to buy the actual ETF, and MicroStrategy is going to lose that premium. Now, based off of that statement, that is why I first bought MicroStrategy, because I'd watched a lot of Michael Saylor videos, and I knew his understanding of Bitcoin and his philosophy around it. And I said that, look, these are two different things. BlackRock holds on behalf of customers who can make the option to sell. MicroStrategy is literally a buy only. They haven't even finished what they're doing. They're trying to do this till 2030, 2040, 2050. Okay, so an ETF holds on behalf of customers who are misinformed. Most likely, they are not like Michael Saylor. They can sell. And what can occur is that they can fall for the scam of the altcoin, Ethereum, the Ethereum narrative, the world computer, and every other altcoin, Solana, blah, blah, blah. And there's a risk that they will sell, because they can sell Bitcoin to take profit for this thing called fiat, because they're not like Michael Saylor. They're not, there's no guarantee that they would have had their Bitcoin awakening. But my MicroStrategy strategy as it is now is literally going to use that to their advantage, and will be absorbing that Bitcoin that is sold and will never sell it. And it's like in Bitcoin, it's a game of, you have to be right every time. When you make that sell of Bitcoin, you have to be right that, yeah, you're going to be able to buy it back or buy back more. MicroStrategy only has to be right once. Okay? Once you sell it to them, that's it. They're not ever selling it back for 100 years. Okay, so you have to be right every time you sell for this magical profit thing. They only have to be right once. They make the acquisition, it's never coming back, or the company's done. That's it. It's either these are buying and never selling, or the company's done. That's it's like saying, oh, Bitcoin's either going to 1 million or it's going to 0. Okay, so as this thing exists, it's absorbing Bitcoin, and it's just going to become more powerful, because MicroStrategy is never going to deal with ETH. If it does, that's a capital leak. That's a spiritual leak, a spiritual energetic leak. And you are now dealing with Ethereum. Okay, you've been compromised spiritually and consciously, because now you're on that timeline of having to deal with Ethereum. But this thing called MicroStrategy, and we had seen via the convertible bond thing and the reflexive action of that the more Bitcoin they have, the more premium they get, the more capital they get, the more money they get to buy more Bitcoin, such and such. So they have periods of which they get the capital to absorb more Bitcoin, and it has a little parabolic move, and then does the Bitcoin 70% crash. But on the long term, all that volatility, all that capital, all that movement was crystallized into more Bitcoin, which remains on their balance sheet for when the world gets destabilized again and capital is looking for somewhere safe to, or they're looking for a return. You know, there's various different things that can happen with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is everyone's perfect product. Okay, so Now, that's the key thing there. As of that point, it was just the Bitcoin ETF. But I know these people do not understand Bitcoin, especially the ETF providers, and the customers don't understand Bitcoin. So when the narrative is Ethereum or Solana and these things are going up, and there's greed in terms of people who want to dump these things, etc., I know that the timeline is, once they start with a Bitcoin ETF, they're going to offer the Ethereum ETF, and then the Solana ETF, and then the Doge ETF. And once you've offered all these products to your customers, altcoining is bad for your spiritual health, is bad for your monetary health, your monetary outcomes, your monetary timeline, your monetary preservation. So the same thing is going to happen. What I was seeing is that, look, this is a risk for Blackrock because it can result in your customers selling out Bitcoin and then not having any. You know what I mean? Yeah. So this results in your customers, because it's not really, you can control them selling out Bitcoin and holding Ethereum, Solana, etc., and the Bitcoin being held by the person who's going to create the shortest or the most explosive short squeeze on the supply of Bitcoin, and position themselves to really send the price of all those altcoins to zero against Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Send all those altcoins to zero against Bitcoin. So now that the ETFs, be it that they are fiat hungry, that's what they understand. They just think it's another way to make money. Fiat have put themselves in a position of a capital leak, a spiritual capital leak, by being, captured by the ideas of the altcoin. It's not. It's the equivalent of a debasable monetary substance. It's the equivalent of a printable monetary substance. By interacting with the altcoin and providing that as an ETF, you've created the capital leak. Okay, and that will be seen by investors either wasting capital, accumulating Ethereum, Solana, altcoins, that in the long term, think about it, it's a very short term mindset to offer these things. In the long term, you could have had all that Bitcoin in your IBIT ETF and collecting those fees. Yeah, but you took this short term thinking and had customers allocate capital, leaking monetary energy to debasable substances, printable substances, which resulted in your ETF not accumulating that Bitcoin. You wasted money, you lost money there for a really short-term monetary gain, whilst you could have just had the Bitcoin. So everything about altcoins is a monetary leak. Ethereum is a monetary leak. Okay, because there will be those who are buying Bitcoin and not planning to sell it for 200, 20 years, 50 years. Okay, and you're really going to see the effects of that, where every other altcoin cannot, people cannot just leave money on the table when Bitcoin is going up parabolically. They're going to sell that for any Bitcoin they can get, which pushes the price of the altcoin to zero. Now, yeah, that's all I can really say. The ETF blunder of dissipating capital or creating a structure or portfolio structure in which capital could be dissipated into debasable monetary instruments, the altcoin. You get the short-term gain of the fees from speculation on Ethereum, etc., Solana, Doge, XRP. But Bitcoin is money, everything else is credit. Okay, so any capital that was directed away from accumulating Bitcoin, you'll pay the price for later on. And be it that Bitcoin requires you to have a almost conscious awakening to understand that Bitcoin is money, everything else is credit. It's likely that the customers will not understand that and are still playing casino games and will give up their position. And BlackRock will potentially miss out on gains that they should have had. So I'll end that there. 2032, the headline will come out. Someone will realize what's going on. Someone will understand that fiat is a mental sickness. Fiat parasitism, where I don't even know how I'm gonna say it. Parasite, fiat mind, fiat brain. It's like you can't count. It's like you don't have a true accounting system. You're just there in a delusion with hallucinations of value. Dollars that you're gaining that don't mean anything, because what do they get in Bitcoin? Yeah. So once people see that fiat as a sickness and that they've also come to it, and products like MicroStrategy, which are Bitcoin only, like Ethereum treasury company, just sounds dumb. It just is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's like you're hoping 12 guys don't debase your money or don't change the rules. I just can't take it serious. Like the fact that you allocate capital, you should be shot. You opened yourself up to not using that money to buy Bitcoin. And that Bitcoin that you could have bought is going to be worth significantly more than any of that other stuff. The end.